Hello to everybody. My name is Dimitar Popov and I work for Green Balkans NGO. And I will be presenting the conservation and restoration activities at Pomorie Lake coastal lagoon. This is the other active salinas in Bulgaria on the Black Sea coast. So next slide. A few words about the site. It's a natural high-pressure lagoon along the Black Sea coast. It is quite close to the previous site that was presented at Anasescu Lake, something like less than 20 kilometers. It is close to the town of Pomorie, and it is a narrow and long coastal lagoon that was converted to salinas several centuries ago. This is the oldest salinas in Bulgaria. Also, it has national and international protected area status, being designated as important bird area in 1989 and as a national protected site in 2001 with 2 Natura 2000 sites under both directives Birds and Habitat, and also a Ramsar site in 2002. Next slide. Few words about the conservation importance. It's not very large, actually, 760 hectares, but it is one of the most important sites in Bulgaria for the priority habitat coastal lagoons. It is the second most important after Anasescu Lake, and also for the Salicornia and other animals type of habitat. It is the most important site in the country for the breeding of the sandwich terns, with the colony numbering between 1,000 and 2,000 pairs, and also the second most important site in the country for the avocet, for the common tern, little tern, black-winged stilt, the Kentish plover, and several other birds. Important stopover site for a lot of birds during migration, especially important for the shorebirds, for the Heradriformes. It is the most important site for plant species. This is the Trichomitum venetum in Latin, species that is listed in Bulgarian Red Data Book. And as it has just recently proven, the most important site in Bulgaria for the damselfly dark spreadwing, the Lestis macrostigma that Philip was presenting earlier. Also in Bulgaria, it is quite important for another fish species. This is the Caucasian Gobi, a small fish species that is quite well adapted to the high salinity of the water. Next slide. Also, as I mentioned earlier, this is the oldest and one of the only 2 operative saltworks in Bulgaria, which is producing sea salt. It is also a very important source of medicinal mud with a long tradition. There are 2 national hospitals and several hotels that are deploying and using the mud deposit in the Pomorie Lake. Also, a salt museum has been created. You can see here on the picture down to the right, this is the traditional type of salinas that has been preserved within the salinas of the Salt Museum with a manual collection of the sea salt and a smaller size salt pans. And the rest of the salinas have been converted to a larger scale production, and you can see the piles of salt that are produced in a good year here on the left. It's also an important site for bird watching with international importance. A lot of the international bird watching groups are visiting the site, especially during migration. And Pomorie Lake Visitor Center has been created by Green Balkans in 2010. Next slide. Yeah, this is a view from the visitor center. Our NGO has started conservation activities and our conservation program more than 25 years ago, with the first steps being directed to the restoration and conservation of habitat for breeding of birds. Here are some pictures from the very beginning in the late 90s and the beginning of the 21st century. The result has been establishment and attracting the sandwich colony that is nesting there on a small islet that was created in the southern part of the lagoon. Next. So also some work. Also, in addition, after the designation of the national protected site, information boards and marking of the protected area have been made, mainly involving volunteers and different projects. Some of the older info boards, some of the newer, you can see here in the next slide. Then our efforts have also concentrated to be more like a site management, not only directed towards the birds. The hydrological regime of the lagoon is defined by the connection to the sea. You can see here on the left, this is the canal that is connecting Black Sea to the and Pomorie Lake, and this is the state of the canal after the restoration. Before that, it was closed, as at that location used to be the old railroad that was reaching Pomorie, but it has been disused for more than 20 years now. The additional opening is facilitating management, regular cleaning of the canal, and also it is facilitating the fish migration, as the lagoon is playing important role for feeding of Mugilide, Aterina, and other fish species. Next slide. Here is also some of the activities of the restoration. All that restoration was made in 2007, 2008 during a GF project. And the next slide is showing also another important activity back then. That was to develop a management plan for the site. And since that was the earliest of Bulgarian's EU accession, that was the first effort to develop an integrated management plan for sites that are overlapping two sites of Natura 2000, SPA under the Bird Directive, and site of community importance under Habitats Directive, together with the National Protected Site and the Ramsar site. Unfortunately, all the studies and the management plan was compiled and submitted in 2010 to the Ministry of Environment, but there was two requested revisions, and since the last submission was made in 2014, there hasn't been any progress by the authority, and of course now it is in a need of a complete revision since many of the plant activities have been already made. One of the major gaps still is the proposed guarding and managing unit that was proposed within the management plan. It is still not existing, so this is a major setback. Next slide, please. As I said earlier, Pomorie Lake Visitor Center was also created within this project. It was managed by Green Balkans for 10 years, and after that period, the municipality of Pomorie took it over in 2020. Even before the visitor center was created, Green Balkans was making a lot of environmental education activities, and the visitor center was used additionally to strengthen these cleanup activities. Major problem for the lagoon is the pollution with waste, domestic and construction. Also, a lot of different events have been organized, and a lot of publication of awareness material. Next slide, please. Now, going back to the threats, as I said, the southern part of the lagoon are really virtually inside the town of Pomorie. You can see here pictures from 2004 and 2021. The town salt pans that have been disused were completely converted into housing areas. You can see on the upper picture on the right side, this used to be the small salty lake. Here, here, this water body. And it was turned into, as you can see on the picture on the right, it was turned into a completely into a new residential area with blocks of flats. Being outside of the protected area boundaries, this was just a new quarter of the town. The same destiny is going on now with this peripheral part in the southern part of the lagoon that you can see. That this used to be the disused salt pans. Only the small piece that you can see on the right picture, which is now the Salinas of the Salt Museum, is preserved of that part. And all the rest is also going changes into a residential area and new homes. Next slide. Also, the developments and the pressure for the tourist developments is going on in the northern part. Here you can see the salt pans that are mainly situated in the northern part of the lagoon. And just next to the salt pans on the right picture, you can see the development of a whole new resort just on the very border of the salt pans. And this former saline pasture has been turned into a new development of a resort. So the pressures are quite high. Also, there used to be the road that was crossing, that was connecting the two largest cities on Bulgaria, coast between Burgas and Varna, was crossing this part of the Salinas here that you see. And in 2017-18, it has been enlarged from 2-lane to 4-lane high-speed road, which was another threat and leading to threat for the migrating birds, for the breeding birds also, and especially for the amphibians and reptiles that are found at the site. Next slide. Further, another ring road circular of Pomorie was built that you can see on the picture on the right. And the picture on the left is showing the hydrological regime that was disrupted by this construction mainly. There used to be and still there is a stream that was feeding the lagoon, being the lowest part of the watershed of about 30 square kilometers. And this has been corrected by a bypass channel that you can see on the left in a green and red. But during the construction of the road, this green part was completely blocked, and now all the water is directed directly to inflow directly into the lagoon, into these basins, peripheral basins, former salt pans. This is leading to a decreased average salinity of the lagoon and increased water level of most of the basins in the lagoon. As a result, actually, in 2021, we have witnessed the first year when the Pomorie Salinas were not operating due to the low salinity of the waters of the lagoon. Next slide, please. So going back to the ongoing LIFE project that we are implementing in partnership with Bulgarian Biodiversity Foundation, Pomorie Salinas, and Turjuvalat, we are aiming to restore these bypass channels so that the inflow of fresh water to be minimized and to restore this salinity gradient, so to improve the conditions and status of the priority habitat coastal lagoons at the site, and in addition to improve the breeding sites for priority bird species, avocet and terns, species that are traditionally nesting at the site, and also to do a study of the dragonfly assemblages, and with a focus on the Lestis macrostigma, as this is quite an important site of this species that is listed in the Bulgarian Red Data book. So next slide, please. And here you can see the bypass channels, which will be subject to restoration. This is the southern bypass channel and the northern bypass channel that are surrounding the Salinas, and also to restore the dikes that are inside the salinas to ensure the gradient of the salinity. Also, the activities include restoration of existing breeding islet for the birds and creation of a new wooden platform. Also, detailed study of the dragonfly assemblages at the site and proposal of a scheme for hydrological management to ensure good status of the Lestis macrostigma. The project website and the Facebook page, you can see the links to these, and of course the obligatory layman report and afterlife plan will be developed. The project is in the middle of its implementation. It is a relatively small life project of 3 years. Next slide, please. And what we have achieved until now during the first full year of the restoration, more than 2,000 meters of dikes have been restored along in the salinas, and 2,000 meters of the northern bypass channels have been cleared. Next. You can see some of the pictures of the restoration of the dikes and the cleared channel on the lower picture. And also one conservation camp was held with volunteers from Bulgaria and abroad. More than 20 volunteers took part for restoring the breeding islet. You can see the picture on the top is at the beginning of the conservation camp. The high water level was flooding the islet, so all that has been filled with the sediment, and in the end of the camp, it was in a much better shape. Next slide. Also, additionally, timber was used to fortify it. Monitoring activities are undergoing with monitoring of the status of birds, their numbers, the breeding birds, monitoring of the coastal habitats with a focus on the coastal lagoons habitat, with the monitoring of salinity, oxygen, and the other hydrochemical components. Next slide. Philip was in Bulgaria in June and end of May, and we have been trained to do studies for dragonflies in the field, and also that study that was performed in the Pomorie Lake has revealed really high importance of the site with a very high abundance of these critically endangered species at European level. And it was even of higher concern that we didn't find the species at the historical location of Poda. Next slide. Also, dissemination activities are going on and stakeholders' involvement following the model of the Atanasos Lake Consultative Council for Pomorie Lake was created, and the first meeting was held. Now we are in discussion with authorities for solving that issue with the that was created by the road construction. Next slide, please. The Natura 2000 Day was also celebrated with children from Pomorie municipality, which was important opportunity for children from the inland part of the municipality to attend the lagoon. Next slide, please. So that's it from me. If you have any questions, you can do it in the chat, and you can follow us on the website and the Facebook. Thank you. Thank you for your attention.